Hi everyone, my name is Billy and you're listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition.
Our guest today is Shawn Boynes, Chief Executive at the American Counseling Association.
He's a Dell alumni and I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to Humans of Authenticity, Shawn.
Thank you so much, V. It's an honor to be here with you, and I look forward to our conversation.
I appreciate your time and joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listener first?
Absolutely. My name is Shawn Boynes, and I am a long-term association management professional. I hail from a small town in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I went to Howard University here in Washington, which is what got me to be in DC, and I've been here for, oh gosh, about 35 years now.
35 years in DC, you might have seen a lot of changes to the capital of the US.
I've seen significant changes in this city. It's been insightful as well as disappointing in some respects when you think about how gentrification has impacted the city, and a lot of the native Washingtonians and other Black and Brown people have been forced out of their neighborhoods to move to other areas of the DMV. So that is something that hasn't been great to see. But overall, it's been an amazing journey to see the city evolve the way it has over all these years.
I've only moved to DC for the last 3 years, so I don't really know the context and know much about the cities. But I imagine with such a political place like DC, with so much changes, over that 35 years, it must have some impact on the association sectors whenever the change comes. Have you noticed any of those change and its impact to the association sector per se?
Not so much. I would say that's probably the one area where it's been pretty consistent, given that this is the nation's capital. One of the things that I enjoy about living in DC is the influx of new people that come into the city whenever there's an administration change. I think that's what keeps the city fresh and vibrant. And also because there are so many top-notch universities here, it has a younger energy. And I think when you combine those two, it just makes for a city that is always alive, and there's always something to do and always some issue that needs to be addressed. And of course, politics leads everything when you turn on the news or having conversations with people. So I think in the association space, especially for trade associations that heavily lobby and advocate on behalf of their organizational members, it's been pretty consistent over the years from my standpoint.
Thank you. I also love part of your introductions, how you say that you've been in this association management sector for so long. What
Mhm.
is it about this sector that keep you with us for so long?
I was a business major and realized towards the end of my degree program that I didn't want to go into the corporate realm, and decided that I would figure out the best way to leverage my marketing degree, and stumbled into the association space like many do. I was fortunate to do so pretty much straight out of college. And what attracted me to the association community is working for mission driven organizations and being able to support members of those organizations and being able to help advocate for change, or being able to provide professional development opportunities to help them be better professionals within their respective professions and workplaces. And then also identifying areas where associations can help solve problems in the nation. And that just made the work that much more rewarding for me. And being able to step into a profession, learn enough about it, and still feel as though you're contributing something for the greater good. Who doesn't want that as part of their career choice? And that's why I've stayed with this community for as long as I have.
Thank you. You just touched on something very important about how we're relevant to the rest of the nations. You say something about identifying area where association can solve problems to help the nations. Is there one particular project or particular problem that you solve that you can share with us?
I can talk a little bit about the association that I'm currently leading as CEO, the American Counseling Association. We are a mental health focused organization. And when you think about where we are in the world right now with the mental health crisis, since the pandemic, I think everything has been magnified. And leading an organization that represents the counseling profession and helping counseling professionals not only as good as they need to be in order to work with the clients that they serve, that to me is trying to solve the problems in the mental health space, that working collaboratively with psychologists and social workers and trying to just address the wellness component of mental health is what ACA is about. And that just is rewarding work for me. I've also worked for an organization that focused on diversity in the legal profession, and that is a very huge thing to tackle when you think about it. But the work that we did really did push the needle and try to bring in diverse representation from people who traditionally had not been represented well in the legal profession on the private law firm side, but then also in corporations, in-house counsel, as they refer to themselves. So that was rewarding work as well.
Are you comfortable sharing the proudest achievement that you've had so far?
I can. One of the proudest achievements for me is related to the last association that I led, the American Association for Anatomy. That organization allowed me to not only grow as a professional, but to help elevate an association that has been around for well over 100 years. I think now they are, I want to say like 133, 34 years old. It's one of the oldest scientific organizations in the United States. And being able to change their governance, help them be better leaders in terms of having world-class governance. Also, rebranding the association. The former name of the association is the American Association of Anatomists, which focuses on the person who identifies as an anatomist. And it's an old term and one that, you rely on the person to identify as such. And I realized that it was important to think about the next 100+ years for the association. And at the core of what they do, it's anatomy. So, small change, we changed it to the American Association for Anatomy so that they could put a stake in the ground and identify as the professional organization representing the discipline of anatomy. And that just is long term. It will continue on beyond me, and something that I think when you step into these roles as a CEO, one of my goals is to always leave things better than I found them. And I think with that association, there were so many wonderful projects that we worked on together that the association is better positioned than it was when I got there.
Thank you for that. I'm so interested in governance in general. And when
Mhm.
you say world-class governance, it just gives me that goosebump. Can you describe what world-class governance look like?
Yeah, I think each organization is different, but at the core of good governance, I like to compare it to the central nervous system in the body. If you can't get governance right, nothing else is going to work. I think there is an opportunity for associations to better educate volunteer leaders about good governance. What does that look like? I think it is making sure that governance can be simplified. A lot of times organizations overcomplicate governance, and I think it's being flexible enough to make the changes as you need to keep up with the changing external environment. A lot of times, organizations set governance structures that may have served them well when they were completely volunteer led at the formative stage of developing the association. But as you hire in professional staff, as the organization grows and evolves, you need to also adjust your governance structure. And sometimes that doesn't happen until there's a need and you're forced to make the change. And I think governance needs to be tended to and cared for every step of the way, and making sure that the staff understands its role in supporting a solid governance structure and just re-educating people over and over again. With any board, you have rotation, people serve and then they move on to the next thing, and you have a new group of people that come in and you have to educate them over and over again. So sometimes it seems redundant, but redundancy is necessary. I think governance that provides opportunities for others to serve instead of the usual suspects, thinking about the future of the profession. How are we engaging with the next generation of professional, and how are we setting them up for success? How are we providing them with opportunities to shape the organization as it needs to serve them, not how it served their predecessors? So for me, that's what governance is, just making sure that you have a structure that allows people to make good, sound decisions for the benefit of the profession and not for self-serving purposes, but then also feeling confident that the governance structure is allowing the organization to move forward.
Thank you for breaking it down. So from that, I'm hearing, first of all, it's the core of the organizations to grow. We have to give it enough flexibility so that the team can make good, sound decisions.
Mhm.
So I'm hearing that you also provide some clarity so that our engaged member know how they could be more involved and how they could be more engaged in the organization's growth.
Mhm.
That's really cool. Thank you. So I want to bring this back to your own stories. So over the course of your time within the association management and your career in general, what is the one thing that you love the most about yourself in that journey?
My growth, certainly looking back over the many associations that I've worked with, this is my seventh association in nearly 30 years. And the variety of associations that I've worked for, including one trade association, and being able to take on and run to opportunities that challenged me, helped me grow and become a better professional. The other part with being in this profession and community as long as I've been in it is the relationships that I've developed and continue to nurture along the way. I have friendships that span the length of my career, going back 25 plus years. And it's important to have those types of solid relationships because when you advance in your career, or you are able to reach the top rung on the ladder and becoming a CEO, you need to have people that you can tap that are trusted and ones that will keep your confidence and you can lean on because it's a very lonely role. And for me, I've been able to tap into many relationships that I've developed over the years to help me just sometimes benchmark. Am I doing this the way I should be doing it? How do I avoid some landmines? What are some of the learnings that they can share with me that they had having been in roles maybe longer than I have been a CEO? And that has served me well. But I would say at the root of what I think about with my career journey is just I've pushed each time to challenge myself more and more. There's this philosophy that I have, which is run to fear. And the things that scare me are the things that ultimately, I learn from and I grow and I'm able to look back and say, I'm glad I did that because had I not done it, I wouldn't be where I am today.
That is so inspirational, especially when you say you push every time to challenge yourself and you grow from it. What give you the motivation to keep going?
I don't like complacency and I certainly don't like mediocrity and I work from a place of excellence. So, in order to do that means that you have to keep raising the bar for yourself. And every position that I've stepped into from one association to the next, it's been an elevated position. And certainly the role that I'm in now, leading a $16 million organization, having led a $2 million organization was a significant leap. And certainly having challenges 2 years into the role, I continue to embrace and saddle myself with my network and my staff team and others who support me to be successful in this role. And that makes the job that much more rewarding because every day is different and there's no shortage of challenges that I continue to face. I joke with my team and say, never a dull moment. And certainly that's been my experience with the current organization that I'm leading.
I love that. What's your mantra as a CEO, and how do you show up with that mantra?
I would say there are a couple of things. One I mentioned already, and that is leave things better than you found them. I think for organizations that have any type of CEO transition, there's going to be opportunities to improve things and make things better. And when you are able to step into an organization, and it's a gift to be at the reins of leading an organization from volunteer leaders, you want to take care of it and you want to make it better. The other part of that is, especially speaking from the lens of a Black gay man, I want to be able to lead authentically. And this is probably one of the first positions that I've had where I stepped into who I am and I lead without any sense of hesitation. I think for much of my career, I had to code switch in order to fit in. For those who may not be familiar with code switching, it's what Black and brown people do to fit into white spaces, to put it basically. And that served me well for a big chunk of my career. But where I am now and the value that I bring to any organization, I can only do that if I am fully and authentically myself. And those two things combined, I think, make for just a stronger leader. And I'm thankful that I have an organization that allows me to do that.
Can you give me an example to bring that sense of being yourself to life? What was the key differences of these organizations that allow you to be who you are?
I would say when I went through the search for this position, the search committee was the most diverse that I have ever experienced interviewing for any position, certainly for a CEO role. And that in itself made me feel comfortable. When they selected me to be the CEO for the organization, one of the search committee members, who at the time was also a board member, said to me, "Shawn, just be yourself." And that in itself just cleared the way for me and validated the need for me to lean into those aspects of who I am without feeling as though I need to be something else just to be respected as the CEO. And that meant a lot to me. And I embraced it. And out the gate, I remember I wrote an article for the magazine and I led with that I'm a Black gay man. And that set the stage. And it's not been anything that I even think about anymore. It's just who I am, and I'm the CEO, and I am here to make things better for the association and to also work collectively and collaboratively with members to amplify the needs of counselors.
That is really cool. So, do you reckon that one sentence, Shawn, just be yourself, is that the signifiers? Is that the sentence that allow you to be more sure to be yourself? Or was there any other factors that make you a lot more confident on who you are?
I had never heard that before from a volunteer leader. Because a lot of
Okay.
times you do get to know volunteer leaders, but I think how they view you and how they engage with you may be very different than how they want to see you as a whole person, if you will. And I think given the nature of counseling and how counselors interact with other people, hearing that from someone who just wanted the best for me and wanted me to excel, recognizing that you can only do that, I think, if you let down your guard and just be yourself. And I think that's true for many Black and brown professionals who are in spaces where they may be the only one or one of a few, and not trying to ruffle feathers. A lot of times we express ourselves differently and that gets a different label. So I think for me, it's just I am the CEO and I can do a good job. I just am not thinking about the identities that I bring to the table with me because they're important. However, it's not anything that I need to kind of code switch about anymore.
I love that. So now you have that experience. How do you, as the leader of the organizations, build a structure so that your team can show up as who they are?
I think it's creating space for people to do the same. I do my best to hire for great talent and expertise and bringing people into the organization who will align with the vision and the direction that we're moving in, but then will also bring their expertise to help elevate things. And that means I don't want them thinking about do they have to code switch or do they have to not be themselves. That shouldn't matter. And when people feel they're most comfortable, I think that's when they lean into, let me bring my best self to the workplace or to the team. And that's important. So I try to create that environment where it's just part of how we are. And I don't want people thinking that they can't be themselves when they step into the workplace.
Is there one specific things that you put into that environment to provide that safe environment for your team that you can share with us?
Not specifically. I think it's challenging now, at least for the American Counseling Association. We're still hybrid. So there are some people who come into the office and some people who are fully remote and some people who come into the office sporadically. So it's hard when you're engaging with people via virtual elements versus the people that are in the office. So I can't point to anything specific that I've done that lends itself to here's how this unfolded for me in this role that I have. So we're still trying to figure some of that stuff out with it being hybrid and how do we create a team that isn't coming into the office and engaging with each other in person.
For sure. Thank you for that. I'd love to move to the keyword discussion now, and you gave us a very interesting one. Would you like to talk about the keyword and why it's important to unpack that?
Absolutely, V. So my key word is self-care. And the reason I chose self-care, I think it's because in these roles, whether you are a CEO or in any type of leadership position as a director or a manager of people, we tend to give so much of ourselves to others. And if you continue to give so much of yourself to either the organization, to projects, to your team, you're eventually going to run out of steam and you're going to burn out. And I realized early on in my CEO journey that it was important for me to set some boundaries because we can work way too much or way too long and feel as though we have to just keep going. We have to keep going. And just like a vehicle, you run out of gas and eventually you're going to stall. So I made a commitment to myself to invest in me. And that meant taking care of myself physically, taking care of myself mentally, taking care of myself emotionally and spiritually. And that's something that I think people don't always think about until they've hit that brink of, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, or oh my gosh, I'm burning out. And then you have to figure out what are you going to do. So I've made it part of my daily practice to just take care of myself. And it's not even, I think there's a spectrum of self care. When people think about self care, some people may think it's, oh, I'm going to go to the spa. I love a spa. Those things are important. But then on the other end, it's simply saying no to certain things. And sometimes it means resting. I realize that I have a hard time just simply resting and letting my mind rest and letting my body rest. So I do my best to try to, when I can, unplug and rest. I take vacations middle of the year, end of the year to make sure that I'm recharging myself. It's setting boundaries. It's helping people appreciate that, yes, you will give your all, but you're not going to give it all the time nonstop. And finding the things that make you happy and bring you joy. For me, it's working out that provides an outlet for me from a mental health standpoint, but then also physically. I love fresh flowers, so I buy myself fresh flowers. Things like that, listening to music in the middle of the day to recharge and just reset myself. And I think for everyone, they need to find their prescription for self-care, and it takes time. I also have daily guided meditations. I practice yoga from time to time. I try a bunch of different things that have worked for me. And again, it's an investment in helping me stay fresh, helping me be my best self so that I can bring that to the organization and the people that I work with, and also to my friends and family that also want me to be my best and to see me happy and to see me thriving.
Thank you so much. You give me so much material that I love to unpack with you now.
Sure.
So you mentioned a daily practice. Can you share with us what does that daily routine look like?
Absolutely. So I am an early riser. I wake up on most days 4 a.m. and I just use that quiet time to set my intentions for the day. I use a guided meditation app and they're not long because I think for me, it's still a challenge to turn my brain off from all of the external noises and the things that I'm thinking about. Oh, what about that 9 o'clock meeting? And those things pop into my head for sure. Or, oh, I forgot to do this. Let me make sure I send myself a note that I don't forget to take care of that thing. So that's still a work in progress for me, but it just helps me calm myself as I enter the day. And I remember years ago, I did what I think a lot of people probably still do. You wake up, you turn the TV on, and living here in the Washington, D.C. metro area, politics leads all news. And I began to realize that it was stressing me out. So I no longer wake up and immediately turn the television on. I typically do not turn the television on at all, especially for the days that I'm leaving home to go into the office. I go in a couple of days a week. But I use that quiet time to just take care of me. It's usually 7 to 10 minutes long, and I follow the prompts that are provided in the guided meditation. And it really does help start my day off on the right foot. And then just staying grounded in the fact that work is going to be work. And yes, it may be stressful, but being mindful that there are opportunities to step away from work, whether it's a short 5-minute break or depending on what may be happening in my day, just going outside for a short walk and getting some fresh air is also something that I use to take care of myself.
Thank you. I hear a lot from early risers about getting up early and set intentions for the day.
Mhm.
Can you explain to me what does that set the intention for the day means, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, it's how do I want to show up? And every day provides us with a fresh opportunity to put the day before behind us and recognize that we may not have been our best selves or we may have had a tough day, but just like the sun rises and the sun sets, we have an opportunity to enter into each day with a fresh sense of, okay, now I'm going to give this another try. One of the things I noticed about myself is that I tend to put extra pressure on myself. I'm hard on myself, and many people are too. And it's how do I offer myself that same compassion, the self compassion that I would offer to my friends or others. And that has also allowed me to lean into what is my intention for the day. So even though I may set that intention, it may not actually happen. And that's okay. But it's setting the intention that kind of helps me just start the day with a focus and being able to try my best to either support my team or to be as productive as I possibly can be, or to just get that project done that I have been avoiding for who knows how long. And at the end of the day, the other thing I do is I reflect. I keep a gratitude journal and I try to write down at least 3 things that I'm grateful for that day. And that is like the bookends for me. So in the morning, you set the intention. At the end of the day, you reflect and set your gratitude, just write them down. And it's interesting because when I go back and look at my gratitude journal, it really does make me feel good because I think in life we tend to take so much for granted. And that's just an easy way to stay present and also to not lose sight of the blessings that we have.
I love that. I'll
Thank you.
pause for a second because I just want to share with you I'm doing the same thing, and this has been my gratitude journals for the last 3 years that I've been
I
doing.
love that. Oh my gosh, that's great.
So I love anytime people say gratitude journals. I have them here to share with you guys. And
That's cool.
every day I write a page of 10 things that I love in that day. So at the end of
Mhm.
today, this conversation will be in my journal.
Oh, thank you so much, V.
Thank you for that. All right. Going back to the interview, when you share the reason why you want to talk about self-care, you also say something very important that I've made a note here. You say that you decided to say no to certain things.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yes. There was a span of probably about 10 years where I said yes to everything. Every opportunity that came my way, I said yes to. If it were a speaking opportunity at an association conference, if it was an opportunity to volunteer on a committee, if it was an opportunity to help someone do something, I said yes. And I did so because I read a book by Shonda Rhimes, and I think the title of it is My Year of Yes, and it resonated with me so much, and I just kept doing it and kept doing it. And one of the things that kept me going is that the more that I said yes, I benefited from those experiences. So I either advanced in my career or I was able to have volunteer opportunities, for example, serving on the board of directors of ASAE. It was the fuel that kept me going. But eventually, what happened is I got tired of saying yes. And I realized that you can only say yes, but so much without losing parts of yourself. And I didn't want to lose all of myself to volunteer opportunities or to the things that, while important to me, they can't be my everything. And I had to ensure that I was investing in myself and taking care of myself. So that's when I started pulling back and shifting my focus and trying to set some boundaries. I still struggle with saying no, being in a position now, career wise, also where I don't feel as though I have to say yes to everything to prove myself or to demonstrate that I'm capable and willing to do things. And I also did it because I wanted to pave the way for other Black and Brown professionals in the association space. In many instances, I was the first to serve in roles. Almost every job that I've had in the association space, I was the first Black man hired for the position. So, with that, it's a double whammy, if you will. There's a sense of accomplishment, but then there's also a sense of responsibility and a bit of a burden in trying to represent people of color as best as I possibly can, but then also feeling the responsibility. I believe if you get a seat at the table, make sure that it's not the last seat for anyone who looks like you. Make sure that you try to find an opportunity to get other people a seat at that same table. So that has been important to me and something that I value. So that fits into the years of yes that I said for just sheer opportunity and trying to make sure that I provided opportunities for others as much as I possibly could.
I'm hearing somewhere in that year of yes, there was a defining moment that you realized that you could say no. Was that what happened to you?
One of the things that I noticed is there's overexposure, and I was everywhere. You would see Sean showing up at this event, or you would see Sean on a webinar, you would see Sean in a volunteer leadership role. And while I appreciated it and while I greatly benefited from those experiences, I wanted to make sure that people understood that there were others like me out there. And instead of always seizing those opportunities for myself, I started shifting to making recommendations for others to have those opportunities. And for me, it's about self awareness and recognizing when it's time for you to move out the way and make space for others versus holding on to volunteer opportunities for as long as you can. And that to me just doesn't bode well for good leadership. So that's when I felt like I hit that tipping point and it was like, all right, you've had your turn. Now it's time to support others and pave the way for others in a way where you don't need to be as visible as you are. And that meant a lot to me because, again, I had checked all the boxes and had accomplished more than I probably thought I ever could in that span of 10 years. That was pivotal for me professionally and personally to recognizing that, okay, it's now somebody else's turn. And how can I support those people?
Nice. And then seeing you start saying no to things, was there a no that you regret saying to?
No, because I'm very thoughtful in the things that I say no to. And for me, it was about also reclaiming my time. When you say yes to a lot of things, that means that you are sacrificing something else, whether it's time with friends, time with family, or just I'm an introvert. I am a big introvert. Just having that quiet time alone where I can recharge, having been overstimulated by being around people all the time, whether it's the workplace or networking events or conferences. I plug in as I need to, but it can be exhausting. When I said no to things, it was just reclaiming my time and finding ways to get back to Sean and investing in me.
I love that. I think it's time for us to move to the last part of the conversations, and I'd
Sure.
love to hear about the legacy piece. So, what legacy do you envision sculpting out for your organization at the moment?
I think counseling and counselors play a significant role in addressing the mental health concerns and issues in this country. And I want to elevate the role of counselors in the mental health community, making sure that they are viewed just as importantly as their psychologists colleagues and social worker colleagues, and making sure that everybody is working together collectively to solve the problems. And then the other is addressing mental health in Black and Brown communities and trying to support people who need mental health. And there's a lot of mental health stigma that exists, just generally speaking, but certainly in Black and Brown communities. Having personal experience with my mother suffering from mental health issues, I experienced it firsthand. So knowing what that's and now being in a position where I'm leading a mental health organization means a lot to me and it's purposeful work at this juncture in my career. So being able to tackle those issues and also recognizing that right now all of the major mental health organizations are led by Black people. So that in itself provides an opportunity for us to work together to try and address the significant increase in suicide rates for young Black youth, especially Black men and boys. And then also trying to just address the lack of access to mental health care services in underserved communities, and then just making it much more normal and common to talk about mental health, just like we would talk about any other kind of healthcare. So that would be my hope and my legacy when it's time for me to pass the baton to the next CEO to lead this organization. And certainly, I don't do this alone. There's an amazing staff team that I'm assembling to also work with me, and then also in collaboration with the board and volunteer leaders of the organization.
I love how specific these elements are in your legacy.
Thank you. It's an honor. And that's the one thing that I remain grounded in. Having this opportunity to lead an organization with such a powerful mission at this point in my life and in my career, it truly is an honor. And I'm grateful, and I do not take it lightly. So I want to make sure that I make the most of it and that I do right by the organization and the members of the organization.
This is so cool. Seeing these elements that you like to put together as part of your legacy for ACA, I'm curious what sort of infrastructure, what sort of conversations do you have with your team and your board on a daily basis so that you can achieve your legacy?
I think it's a couple of things. One, it's having focus and direction, and we have strategic priorities like many organizations, and making sure that we align our staff and financial resources so that we are as impactful as we can be in moving the organization forward. Change is hard for everybody, and that includes me. But I think as organizations evolve, there has to be some degree of just ongoing change to make sure that the organization stays relevant, that the organization stays as plugged into the communities that it's trying to serve. And when you think about change management, it involves people. So that means that you have to find appropriate ways to influence people to get the outcome that you want. And certainly it's different when you're working with staff as the leader of the organization, but then in collaboration with volunteer leaders and making sure that you're on the same page as much as you possibly can. How are we aligning and having those conversations that are more future focused? If we're having conversations about the here and now, okay, that's always going to be necessary so that you're keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the external environment. But I think where expertise is better aligned is focusing on where do we want to be 15, 20 years from now? Because if we're not slowly making changes and adjustments, by the time we get to those points, there may be another disruption. And how do you recover from disruption if you've not weathered and prepared for what that might mean for the profession or for the organization? So those conversations are sometimes more challenging to have because people want to focus on, okay, well, I'm on the board for 3 years. I want to get something done and I want to see the results of my decisions and the actions that we're taking as a board on the organization and on the profession. And that's just not realistic. If you're only focused on the here and now, again, you're not preparing for how you're going to need to maybe weather that next storm 15, 20 years down the line. And that's where I think CEOs should focus if they're not already focused, and trying to make sure that you're preparing for the next thing and being able to be as flexible as possible. The pandemic was an eye opener for all of us. And I think if organizations haven't revisited and evaluated what they're doing now compared to what they were doing pre-pandemic, it's a disservice to the staff teams and the volunteer leaders and also to the professions that they may represent. Nothing is going back to pre-pandemic anything. And we just have to focus forward and be better, do better, and expect more from each other.
I just want to take a minute to digest that. So what I'm hearing is, as a CEO, you want to make sure you know where the organizations will head to in 20 years or so. And you also need to bring the team, bring the board along while these individuals might have a shorter time frame within their duty with the organization.
Yeah, yeah. And that's tough. It really is tough, but that's part of the job in leading and in collaborating with the people. No one can serve in a CEO role without having people working with them to address challenges, trying to remain relevant, trying to push forward and identify the next innovation, or trying to just address issues where an organization advocates on behalf of its membership, whether it's individuals or companies. I think there are always going to be things that people need to address from a change management standpoint, like I mentioned before.
And you say something interesting with that, the innovation piece, because we will not be able to have that mindset of innovations if we don't envision how or where we will be in 20 years' time. So
Exactly. And innovation, I would say, doesn't happen without failure. And I think in the association space, there is a risk tolerance divide in how we approach innovation. I think volunteers tend to be risk adverse. However, you have to lean into trying different things and seeing what's going to work. And of course, everything's not going to work and failure will happen. How do we respond to failure and how do we work through it from not a punitive standpoint, but from a learning standpoint?
all of a sudden, hearing you, I'm thinking of Steve Jobs in the sense that he know how the 20th model of the iPhone was going to look like by the time that he released the first model. So you remind me a lot of that mindset, envisioning where we will get to in a 20 years time. And
That's very kind of you to say and to make that comparison. I will humbly say I don't know if I can be compared to a Steve Jobs, but appreciate it. And I think that's just the space that I work from. I get bored with sameness. And how do we continue to make improvements? It's an iterative process every step of the way. We shouldn't keep doing things the way we've been doing them year over year. It's okay, we did it great this year, but how do we make it even better the next year? So there's always room for improvement as long as we're paying close attention to things.
thank you for sharing that. We're getting to the end of the episode. I have two questions left, and I
Sure.
hope you have fun with this one. So imagine if the American Counseling Association were fictional characters, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say someone like Wonder Woman. And here's why. Wonder Woman tended to try to fix problems, did so in a very graceful way, and did so for the greater good. When I think about the mental health space, there are always going to be problems, but could ACA be that Wonder Woman that's stepping into kind of fixing or coming to the rescue of those who need mental health services, broadly speaking?
That's really cool. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
now you are the CEO of Wonder Woman. What would you do to make sure that you set her up for success?
Making sure that she's taking care of herself when you're trying to be the savior of everyone and trying to help people feel safe and feel supported. You got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So I would make sure that Wonder Woman had a nice self-care routine in place for herself so that she could recharge and prepare for the next battle every day.
Perfect way to wrap up the episode with us. Thank you again so much for sharing your knowledge and sharing your time with me.
Absolutely. My name is Shawn Boynes, and you're listening to Humans of Authenticity, and this is the special CEO edition.